Crossfire, opening remarks. The film noir plot is notoriously complicated. Some of the worst films of the genre do this pointedly, basing the entire film experience on endless twists like a Japanese roller coaster. But the best of the genre grow their convolutions organically. How? By having two experiences going at once, the character story and the collective story. All of the characters may find themselves involved in a single murder, but that plot catalyst is also the inciting incident for each of their personal journeys. Having every pertinent character in a film personally react to the events of the plot is very hard to do in a standalone film. And that's excluding another noir trope, red herrings. Even impertinent characters can have a journey. Who cares? Free for all character development. Everyone gets an adventure. Crossfire is just such a story. Adapted by John Paxton from the 1945 novel The Brick Foxhole, I am going to have a lot to say after we watch the movie. As I've said, watching old movies is a way of contextualizing history. Indeed, films can be exhibits, clear-cut evidence of how America built its ideology. Literally, we can watch movies like I Was a Communist for the FBI and The Manchurian Candidate to identify the current of the mainstream. The sentiments and anxieties that would shape legislation, structural bureaucracy, and our day-to-day culture. These pointed, evidencing films are not just reflection of public opinion, however. They are also propaganda. In a message film, screenwriters and directors purposefully make an honest-to-God thesis statement and follow through on the lesson like only a Hays Code picture can. So, from films like Crossfire, we get to learn more about what Americans were feeling politically in 1947, as well as what liberals were pushing in Hollywood, and how their films were eroding the Hays Code. Add to that, an incredible cinematographic experience, and a two-punch story of plot and character, and you've got a stew going. Crossfire is described as a claustrophobic thriller. A Jewish man is murdered in his apartment. Suspicion is cast upon a war veteran, Mitchell, played by George Cooper, but his friend, an effortlessly cool sergeant, played by Robert Mitchum, is sure of his innocence. The truth may turn out to be far more insidious than a simple disagreement, however, involving a deep prejudice that homicide investigator, played by Robert Young, is determined to reveal and snuff out. Robert Ryan plays yet another terrible person, providing an excellent emotional contrast to the unflappable vibes of the other two Roberts. Crossfire would go on to receive 5 Academy Award nominations, including Best Supporting Actor for Robert Ryan, Best Supporting Actress for Gloria Graham, and Best Picture, the first B-budget movie to nominate in that category. Soon-to-be blacklisted director Edward Dmytryk managed to wrangle his plots and characters and tie them tightly together with dialogue, visuals, and performances. I think the pleasure in watching a good film can help fortify us when it comes to actually analyzing its message. And boy howdy, does this film cry out for analysis like a computer lost in the forest. So, prepare, take a drink, and catch yourself in the crossfire. I have more things to say after we make it through to the other side. Crossfire 1947. It's a really beautiful, interesting, and affecting film noir. I have a couple key takeaways from the film, particularly related to its political messaging and historical function. So strap in. The original novel, The Brick Foxhole, was actually not about the murder of a Jewish man. It was about the murder of a gay man. But because of the Hays Code, you couldn't have a gay character. It's really actually fascinating the way that the Hays Code prohibited the depiction of homosexuality, because it was not explicitly said. Like, you know, they wouldn't even say the word, because to say the thing out loud is to acknowledge that it exists. So it is forbidden through the term any inference of sex perversion. So that's pretty weird. So what are they going to do? They want to adapt this movie. They want to tell this story and have some kind of a message. The novel itself really lent itself to an interesting movie. So how are they going to do it? They can't make Samuels black, obviously. This was 1947. It's still a really weird time. Malcolm X was in his first year in prison. Martin Luther King Jr. just decided to become a preacher. Jackie Robinson is getting shit on in Philadelphia. Gone with the Wind is less than 10 years old. It's just like a totally weird in-between time. So a B-budget movie was not going to be able to deliver a real message like you shouldn't hate and murder Black people. Next week, I think we're going to watch No Way Out, which is a Sidney Poitier film that is very much the message: you should not hate and murder Black people. So I'm just really excited about that. But this film, however, ends up being like a really great example of how the system is designed to protect itself. Instead of doing what the book did and arguing for the humanity and acceptance of gay people, we get an argument for the humanity and acceptance of Jewish people, as well as the Irish, Italians, and other Europeans and Slavic peoples. Catholics, you could be white. This is good and wonderful and a sign of progress, and some of those monologues from Finley are very moving, but then, there's a problem. There's a problem in this context. What is the key takeaway from the movie? What's the call to action for the audience? And it is simply solidarity among white people. Jewish, Gentile, Catholic, who cares? We're all white. We're all one people. This is what 1940s liberals raised their boom babies to believe. Eliminate the casual white-on-white racism and live in harmony together. This is the sentiment that enabled the collective neutralizing of white America. All previous national and cultural beliefs and traditions either become novelties and decorations or are eliminated entirely once a people become white in America. Yeah. And America at this point was ready to begin entertaining the idea that Jewish people were white because so much war propaganda surrounded trying to get white Americans to be disgusted with the Holocaust. This wasn't easy. 10,000 Nazis gathered in Madison Square Garden in 1939. The idea that America has always been anti-Nazi and anti-Semitism is a fucking lie. But the American war machine needed bonds and bodies to defeat Germany. They needed a moral commitment from the white citizenry. So they had to push the narrative that Jewish people are in fact people. They are in fact white, like you and me. So the baby boomer liberals, they grew up being fed messages that one ought to reject prejudice, but in the abstract, because those white people in power were assured by the system they built that it wouldn't ever threaten their position. Indeed, solidarity among white people would only protect the system further, and it would pacify white people who, with a little real talk, might be inclined to become real leftists. If white people are not witnessing prejudice in their own self-segregated communities, then they can pretend it doesn't exist elsewhere. This is why the news footage of horrible assaults on Black protesters in the 1960s were so shocking to mainstream white America. Prejudice had been whitewashed from their communities through messages of white solidarity. But that brings us back to another key takeaway from this movie. Not only should white people be a unified, harmonious community, but we should trust the police to root out those unenlightened and corrupted white people. It's perfectly fine for a police officer to fire wildly into the street from an open window and extrajudicially execute a fleeing unarmed suspect. We know he's guilty. He's guilty. So we don't need to waste time with pesky little things like due process. We can just trust the police to know who to kill. Indeed, a lot of cinema would resolve crime plots with the police just straight up murdering the criminal. America has not only always tolerated, but taken great comfort in the idea that white police can shoot the bad guys in the back. These 2 points are why I wanted us to watch this film right now, as we were talking more about institutional racism and the role that police play in maintaining it, to the point that we were having some real conversations about abolishing police. We can talk about the performances, dialogue, cinematography of Crossfire as it pertains to the film noir genre, but I also hope that this film can help us better understand the process by which America turned racism into a submersible and a subliminal message that is the thread woven into America, a direct line from the core explicit white supremacist values on which our institutions were founded. As Black Americans, the indigenous, and other people of color began to take their rights and erode the bald institutions like slavery and segregation, the white system had to change, had to protect itself. It appropriated language of solidarity in order to unite Americans with white skin into one cohesive unit and provide privileges to the middle and working class whites that would dissuade them from forming class solidarity with Black and brown people. And to secure the system further, it would socialize that cohesive white unit to deeply, deeply trust and admire the police to the point of idolatry. Okay, I'm gonna turn off the fasten seatbelt sign. You're now free to move about the cabin.